Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Wild Your Garden. A very springtime episode, I think. It certainly feels like that. I've got chiff-chaff, African migratory species obviously, chirping away in the background, doing that lovely chiff-chaff, chiff-chaff, chiff-chiff, chiff-chaff. Fantastic, love those things. They're in the country now and they are going to be starting to breed very, very shortly. And this week I've actually had a robin starting to build a nest in one of the robin boxes in my own garden, so I've freshly ordered a trail cam just for you guys, so I'm hopefully going to try and get some imagery, obviously without disturbing the bird, of them building a nest, and yeah, hopefully some a bit of a story there on the chicks as well. So fingers crossed I can bring you guys some fantastic footage in due course. But firstly, before we start today's topic, I just wanted to say a huge shout out to my good friend Bob over at UK Amphibians. Now, if you haven't checked out UK Amphibians on the YouTube channel or their YouTube channel, check them out. Fantastic job Bob's doing of informing and educating everybody on the wonderful world that is our amphibians, frogs, toads, newts. He's got some incredible species that he breeds and looks after. Some really, really good informative videos there, so check him out. I'm really trying to get him to 1,000 subscribers. He's on 750 at the moment, so if you can, please give him a subscribe. There's some really interesting content and obviously a great synergy, I think, with the Wild Your Garden channel. So yes, do check out UK Amphibians if you haven't already. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to address a question I get asked a heck of a lot this time of year, and that is, are daffodils good for wildlife? Now, there's a bit of a story with this one, so bear with me. The true native wild daffodil, I hate to say, is one wildflower that I've actually never seen. Now, you might be thinking, well, what do you mean? You're surrounded by them. And yes, I am. But these are actually all garden derivatives, garden escapees, or varieties of our traditional English native wild daffodil, which unfortunately is now refined to a few sites in South Devon, the Black Mountains in Wales, and in Cumbria in the Lake District, where you can actually see this wildflower. I'd love to see some. I've never actually been in the right place at the right time, so it was a real shame. But long story short, I'm sorry to tell you guys that the daffodils you see in the supermarkets, in our graveyards, churchyards, and obviously if you haven't seen my recent video on the benefits of going into your local graveyard at this time of year, do check that video out. I'll put a link at the end of this one. Some wonderful wildflowers around at the moment in churchyards and graveyards. A really good spot to check for wildflowers, so yes, do check that out. But unfortunately, most of the wildflowers you see, the wild daffodils, sorry, that you think are wild daffodils, in and around these areas are actually, I'll almost guarantee, derivatives from the native, which is such a shame, as I say, because these are a wonderful plant. They look absolutely gorgeous this time of year. Now, a bit of a background about the wild daffodil before we go into whether these daffodils are good or not for wildlife. Now, the daffodil is also known as the Lent lily, as it's associated obviously with Easter, so the time of year. It's also known as the Lent lily, the true wild daffodil. And the true wild daffodil has a Latin name of Narcissus pseudo-narcissus. Bit of a mouthful, but apparently the Greek myth behind it is that Narcissus apparently became so obsessed with his own face, or his own look, shall we say, his reflection that he saw in a water body, whether that be a pond or pool, I'm not sure. I can't really ask him to find out. Apparently he became so obsessed with his own reflection he actually fell in and drowned, and it's believed that the name came from the fact that the daffodils represent the nodding head of Narcissus looking in and out of the pool, because apparently, whether you believe it or not, again, there is a belief that the wild daffodils came out of that wet pool or the margins or whatever, which they do like. They do enjoy a wet meadow or a shady woodland area. Obviously these ones are on a bit of a sunny bank, but over there I'll put some clips in now. They do like a shady setting. So yes, bit of a myth, bit of folklore behind the wildflower there. Whether you choose to believe it or not is entirely up to you. But yes, it is. It's always interesting, I think, when you read up on these interesting facts about the wildflowers. Now, the true native wild daffodil looks similar to, if you can make out, I'll put a couple of close-ups in, the sort of the creamy coloured daffodil that's behind me over there, where they're not the true yellow. The petals around the main trumpet are actually like a pale cream colour, and the trumpet is a slightly deeper yellow colour. So that's how you can distinguish the wild daffodils. That, of course, and the location being in only a few sites, as I've previously named. And also they are a lot shorter. These ones, or as wonderful as they are, they're quite blousy. They're, you know, probably 18 inches tall. And the true wild daffodils are actually only about a foot tall, 30 centimetres, so quite a bit shorter actually. And the leaves are a more grey-green rather than the kind of the more green colours. These are a little bit grey, don't get me wrong, but they're a little bit more grey-green than the daffodils that you see behind me here, the ones that we see strewn along our motorways, or say in our churchyards, those sorts of places. Now, the ultimate question, are these daffodils good for wildlife? Well, I've been sat here for about 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, just taking a few shots of these daffodils, which obviously I have been and will be overlaying over this video. And I've seen about 2 bees. Now, okay, it's getting towards the end of March, it's still early in the bee nesting season, but there's very, very little activity on these daffodils. I mean, I'll put a clip in now of some dandelions that I saw on the way here, which were, I mean, just absolutely, as you see, covered in pollen beetles. Cracking little beetle. And a full video on dandelions and whether they are good or not for wildlife. I think you probably, if you're watching this, you know the answer. You know what I'm going to say. But a full video on dandelions coming up. I just haven't found a big enough clump that I can safely film yet. Most of them have been along motorways, which I can't really stop and do a video next to, unfortunately. But full video on the dandelion coming up, why they are vital for wildlife and why you should have them in your lawn. But that was absolutely covered in pollen beetles, and I've seen 1 or 2 pollen beetles in the trumpets of these flowers. And you can get, of course, ones with more orange centres, the creamy ones like those ones, you know, the bright yellow ones. And again, they are wonderful flowers, but unfortunately, because they've been kind of manipulated so much by the garden escapees, the original wild daffodils aren't actually these daffodils aren't actually that good for wildlife. They're just whatever it is. The taste of the pollen, the nectar has changed so much so that it's not as appealing as the true native wild daffodil, which I think is a shame, because, as I say, they are a wonderful wildflower, and they are one that loves damp settings like a meadow, as I say, and woodland settings, so they are really good in shade. But it's because of this crossbreeding and pollination, which is similar to, of course, the bluebells, and I'll be doing a full video of bluebells in a video to come. The flower spikes are just starting to emerge in my garden down in Essex, so yeah, really exciting. They'll be soon flowering, and of course I'll be bringing you a full video. But as I say, they have cross-pollinated with the non-native Spanish bluebells, which are a much bigger, sort of beefier version, thicker, juicier leaf. So if you've got some bluebells coming up in your garden, or you have a patch you know that is bluebells, but you're not quite sure because it's, you know, 18 inches tall, that unfortunately are the Spanish bluebells, which I would probably recommend digging up, because they do become a bit of a problem when it comes to cross-pollination, the same as these, and this is the problem. Now, the main belief that these wildflowers have declined, I'm talking about the daffodils now, is through lack of or loss of habitat, should I say. So some people believe it was through being picked, but actually they don't take too badly to being picked daffodils. But the wild native daffodils were actually once a very widespread wildflower right the way throughout the UK. So I think the most, well, not me personally, but I've done my research, and most of the declines are due to a lack of habitat, or, you know, a loss of habitat. So the intensification of agriculture and the draining of our countryside. Of course, they love damp settings, so, you know, when we're going around putting land drainage in all our fields to help them drain better, we are, of course, then depleting those water sources and making these areas less viable for the plants and less attractive, of course. So the intensification of agriculture has certainly had a big impact, and the loss of a lot of orchards obviously hasn't helped as well, where it's sort of nice shady areas, and woodland, of course, as well. We've lost a lot of woodland. The decline has been believed to go back to around about the middle of the 19th century, so 1850s onwards, where obviously agriculture was beginning to intensify. So I think that's a big reason that they have declined massively, which again is such a shame, because They are a wonderful, wonderful plant, and they really do bring such a wonderful splash of colour to the countryside. But you know, these should be covered in insects right now. I've seen 7 or 8 brimstones today, peacocks, small tortoiseshell butterflies. But I think, as I say, and doing a little bit of research, only bees will use these when there isn't much else available. So a real shame, but unfortunately these aren't very good for your garden. So if you can, get on the Wild Your Garden website. We have got a stock of wild daffodils for sale. If you are looking to buy some and want to get some in your garden, please try and avoid these non-native species, because, as I say, I mean, it's not so much of an issue in your own gardens, obviously, if you're in the east of the country, and most of the time you're not going to be anywhere near where these relic populations of the daffodils, the wild daffodils, are for them to crossbreed. But certainly if you are in the areas I've previously mentioned, South Devon, the Black Mountains in Wales, or in the Lake District, then do just check if you've got any local populations, because of course it would be a shame to introduce these daffodils or this type of daffodil, the non-native species, to then crossbreed, as I say, with the native wild ones in your area. Anyway, I hope that has given you guys a bit of an insight as to daffodils, their uses, and why and how they are good for wildlife in certain situations, and answered the question for you, fingers crossed. Now, I will be bringing you many more videos coming very soon on the channel of all the ways in which you can help wildlife. I've got dandelions, as I say, coming up, bluebells will be coming up shortly, and lots of other videos in between. I'm just in the middle of filming the garden transformation. 1 or 2 of you may have seen the recent posts in the comments, in the community tab, nearly forgot the name, community tab. Keep checking the community tab, guys, because that's where I do often little posts like tweets or Instagram posts, but it's just on the YouTube community tab, so check that out for updates of all the upcoming stuff to the channel, and very, very exciting news to break to you soon, so stay tuned. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and give the video a like, hit the notification bell, and then of course you will be informed every time I post a new video. So thank you very much. Stay wild, guys. I'll see you soon.